So from there, the ice field, like I said, divided into 3 sections, north, east, and west. But from there, when the ice melts, the water actually flows in 3 different directions, and it will end up in 3 different oceans. Everything that melts on the north side of the ice field eventually ends up in the Arctic Ocean, so it's all part of the Arctic watershed. Everything on the east side ends up in the Atlantic, so it's all part of the Atlantic watershed. And on the west side, everything ends up in the Pacific, so it's all part of the Pacific watershed. Now, each one of these directions has a very important river system connected to it. On the north, it's the Mackenzie River system, which is quite important because it flows through the Alberta tar sands. That's where we get all our oil from. And they use water from the Mackenzie to get the oil out of the ground. It takes 1.5 barrels of water to extract 1 barrel of oil from the ground, so that's quite important. On the east side, it's the North Saskatchewan River, which is one of Canada's longest rivers. It kind of meanders all the way through the 3 prairie provinces. So of course, you know, they're going to take all the fresh, clean water from there to irrigate the crops on the prairie provinces. So that's very important. And on the west side, it's the Columbia River system. And from there, they get a lot of hydroelectric energy from the Columbia River. There's, I think, 13 or 14 power dams along the Columbia River in Canada alone. So it provides a lot of power for the Pacific Northwest. As a matter of fact, a lot of that power going to the United States is going as far south as Los Angeles, California. So Triple Continental Divide, it all begins right there, Mount Snowdome. Now this summer it was quite hot here, and we had a lot of melting, of course. You can see how the water, when the ice is melting, of course the water will form these little streams, and the streams end up eating their way through the ice. Now when the water finds a weakness or an obstruction, it'll kind of swirl round and round and round. This is called an eddy, and the eddy will actually drill its way through the ice, and it leaves behind what we call mill wells, which can be very, very dangerous. Big mill wells you can see, little ones are not so easy to see. If you ever fall into a mill well, you're history, that's it. You'll never claw your way out of a mill well. You need somebody there with ropes or whatever to help you. When the water falls into the mill well, of course, it's going to swirl round and round. It's almost like when you flush a toilet. You get that circular motion, the water is hugging the sides. This makes the hole wider, makes the hole deeper, but it also polishes the ice. So the farther down you go into a mill well, the smoother the ice is. Now this one just opened up at the beginning of June, but you can see it's gotten quite big. That's because there was a lot of water flowing here this summer. I'm going to show you in a minute what it looked like at the beginning of June, but first of all, I want to show you one that we call Granddaddy. This mill well here is 5 years old, and it's one of the biggest ones on the glacier. If you could stand at the edge there and look straight down, you'd see that it drops about 85 feet straight down. That's about 26 meters or so, so that's one of the big ones for sure. Parks Canada was using this one to practice their avalanche and crevasse rescue there at the beginning of the year. It was kind of neat to see. Now that first one I showed you, at the beginning of June, it was about this size right here. So you can see that there's been a lot of runoff this year by the size of the holes. So this is what it looked like just a couple months ago, and you can see what it looks like now. So this actually is just a little tiny baby mill well. Isn't it cute? You're supposed to say, "Aww." There you go. So this one could give us trouble next year. If it gets bigger, we'll have to move the road, of course. Now the melting of the glacier, I told you in the 1840s that the ice was right up to the top of the moraine. You can see that on the right-hand side. You can see it in front of us. As a matter of fact, going in this direction, you can pretty much follow it all the way down. They pointed out the terminal moraine when you were coming up here on the shuttle bus, so you know that the ice was right up against the base of Wilcox Mountain. Down at the bottom there, it went from one side to the other where the lateral moraines are. It was also about 300 feet thick. That's about 100 meters down below. So when the first explorers came through here, well, they couldn't get over the glacier. They couldn't get around it. They couldn't get behind it. There was that much ice down there. Now, 163 years ago isn't that long. The volume that is melted in that short period of time is quite phenomenal. Now, an advanced period and a period of recession are natural cycles that occur on Earth. Each one of those will last a couple hundred years. Now, the advanced period that ended in 1843, all that means is that the atmosphere was cooler. So, of course, we had long, cold winters and we had short, cool summers. Now, the reverse is what they call a recession. means that the atmosphere is warmed up, so now we have long hot summers and we have short mild winters. So of course everything is melting. This includes North Pole and the South Pole, as I said earlier. The problem with this recession, of course, is the global warming is having quite an effect. It's accelerating the rate of melt around the world. I don't know if you've had the chance to see Al Gore's movie, Inconvenient Truth. It's quite a movie, to say the least. And also there's another documentary I saw over the winter on PBS that was called Vanishing Ice. And the neat thing about that documentary is they show photographs taken from the satellite picture of the continent of Antarctica. And over the last 3 years, what they've done is superimpose the pictures one on top of the other, and then when they peel them off one at a time, you can actually see the continent shrinking, and it's shrinking at an alarming rate. So of course this is going to cause the ocean levels to go up, and they figure in about 50, 60 years from now, we're going to be in a bit of trouble, to say the least. Anyways, this glacier will move forward in the winter. It'll move forward at least 50 feet, so that's like one step forward. But in the summer, it's melting back about 75 feet, so that's like 2 steps back. We're losing 25 feet or 8 meters a year from the very toe of the glacier. And this year, because it was long, hot summer, I wouldn't be surprised if those numbers went up. From the top of the ice where we are right now, they use a device that's called an ablation rod. And they've been able to determine that we're losing about 6 meters or 18 feet from the very top of the ice every year. Now, even though the glacier is melting back at the toe, don't forget it's still moving forward. The rate of advancement, of course, is not as great as the rate of melt, but it still is moving forward. You've got all that gravity that's pulling the ice down, the incline of the valley here. You've also got all that pressure that's pushing it out of the ice field. It's coming out of the ice field at the rate of about a foot a day there at the head wall. So you've got 2 forces at work moving the ice, one pushing, one pulling. Now, when the ice is moving, there's an awful lot of friction down at ground level. I showed you at the top of Mount Andromeda there what the ice did, cut out that huge semicircular shape. Well, that same friction is going on beneath us right now. And what's happening there is the ice is grinding up all of the rock underneath into a very, very fine dust or powder that the geologists call rock flour. Now, during the summer months, you get a lot of water under the glacier from the melting, so it's going to flush out the rock flour. The rock flour will get into the rivers, it'll get into the lakes, and that's what gives the beautiful blue colors that you see in the water here in the Rockies. Now, Lake Louise, I don't know if you've been there, maybe you're headed there later today. It's a gorgeous blue color. But when you get right up close to the water and look in there at the shore, you'll see it's kind of a milky blue, sort of a chalky look to the water. That's the rock flour that you're seeing. Lake Louise is what they call an agitated lake. There's a lot of creeks flowing into it from all the glaciers that surround it, and it's actually bringing in a lot of rock flour, so it never really gets a chance to settle to the bottom. That's why you get that milky look. But when you get places where the water is calm, the rock flour will settle to the bottom, and then you get those beautiful emerald and turquoise colors that you also see around here. Peyto Lake, Bow Lake are really good examples of that. You'll see a lot of those lakes as you're driving south from here, heading towards Banff and Lake Louise. So of course this means that no 2 lakes are exactly the same color, and even the lakes themselves will vary slightly in shape from year to year, depending on the amount of rock flour or the agitation of the water. Now, all of this rock that you see here, this is called sedimentary rock. It's made up of limestone, dolomite, and sandstone. What sedimentary rock means is that millions of years ago, this was actually the floor of an ocean. And if you go to Banff, the museum there, they've got on display some fossils of sea life. And the little plaque will tell you that these fossils were found at the very, very top of Nigel's Peak. Nigel's Peak is the one that's in the 11 o'clock position there on our left. That's the one with all the snow on it. So it's quite interesting to think that they were found right at the very, very top. So there are fossils in this rock here. I've never found any. We come hiking at nights here sometimes quite a bit, and I've yet to find any fossils at all, but some have been found, so they say. Now on the left there, this is Sunwapta Lake. People that have been here in the past, they notice 2 things when they come back for a second visit. The first thing they notice, the most obvious, is that the glacier has really melted and receded. The second thing they notice is that the lake is shrinking. Now you think with all the melting that's going on here, that lake should actually be growing from year to year, not shrinking.